Code of conduct.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king. God made me punch in accurate numbers. My castle won't crumble. What I tackle will fumble. I've been a leader when they ain't see it, but now my feet is up. According to me, royalty didn't end with King Tut. Crown on my head, clouds is at my legs. Big says sky is the limit. I look down on the ledge. I push the bar like I'm opening a cell. Hands in my cookie jar, you won't come out with a single nail. I need all of mine. The weight of my shoulders won't fit on a scale. What's a king to a giant? Well, Goliath fell. Even if we playin' chess, dog, this king can't be checked. I make all my moves on the board, I invented my steps. I'm a king, the blood of a ruler, I feel like Mansa Musa. Make your squad disappear like landing by the Bermuda. Triangle, look at it from my angle. I'm a king, the closest thing to being one of God's angels. I'm a king. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. I put in extra work that just can't be found. I took the sword out the stone, wasn't a thing. Look me in my eyes cause I'm a king.
Shout out to
Look
Hooli.
me in my eyes cause I'm a king.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. This is the Code of Conduct for the King podcast. I am your host, Jake Mr. King, and I am back and excited for today's episode. I have two amazing special guests joining me very shortly here. I have Matt Parrino and I have Ryan Talbot of the Shout Pod and the Shout Everything. They do it all. These guys are amazing. I have them joining me very shortly here to talk about the Buffalo Bills preseason game over the weekend against the Indianapolis Colts. And we're going to talk about the roster and a bunch of different things. So very excited to have those gentlemen joining me here shortly. Before we do, I do want to talk just a little bit about that game. There were some things that happened that I'm excited about. There's some things that happened that it's like, I don't know. But it's preseason. It was the first preseason game. No Josh Allen, no Stephon Diggs, but we did get to see a multitude of other starters. I liked what I saw from James Cook off the rip. It was a very limited day for him, but he looked explosive. It's not even the touchdown. Touchdowns are great. We love scoring touchdowns. But I'm looking at how he's hitting the holes. I'm looking at his vision. I'm looking at his quickness once he hits the hole. I'm looking at just the blocking for the running backs. It looks like the Buffalo Bills made a very, very strong effort to make sure we're blocking, to make sure we're putting 12 personnel on film, to make sure, we give Josh Allen a running game that will benefit. And also, I just think if you can overthink or read too deep into anything about the game from Saturday, is that I think the running game is going to be a big focal point of the offense. We're still going to throw the ball 40 times a game, 35 times a game. Don't get scared. Josh Allen will still win you your fantasy league. But what this does is now, instead of Josh Allen taking certain unnecessary hits for runs, the running game will be it'll be sufficient enough to where Josh Allen doesn't have to put his body at risk the same way as often as he does. So I'm very excited about the running game, very excited about James Cook. I think he looks amazing. Offensive line. Not sure how much everybody watched it. Like how deep you watched everything. I'm going to tell you, I'm not too upset with the offensive line. I know I saw some complaining and rumblings, no pun intended, on Twitter. But I feel good about our rookie. First of all, Osiris played well, and I think if he can continue to play like this throughout the preseason and also, just show some things in practice, I think he's our starting guard. I don't think it's a question. I know Bates is good. I know we love Bates, but I'd rather have quality depth to start at multiple positions across that line in Bates rather than have him start and we're sitting on a stud in Osiris. I think Osiris is our guy, period. And I hope that our line stays healthy. I want Morris. I want to see Mitch, no concussions this season. It would break my heart to have Mitch suffer, I think, a seventh for his career, a seventh concussion. I'm super concerned about that. I don't know how many people are. Maybe I shouldn't be, because it seems like the Bills aren't. It seems like Mitch Morse isn't. But for me, I'm super concerned about that. When you have multiple head injuries like that for your career, I think it gets, I don't know, murky times, murky conversations, murky times. So, but no, I'm impressed with the offensive line. And then the last thing that I want to kind of bring up and talk about prior to bringing my guests in, has Sean McDermott not been freaking? It's only been one game, and it's the preseason, but he's aggressive. I saw some pressures on the quarterback. I saw some exotic looking blitz packages. I saw some things that we didn't quite see over the last few years. Again, this is preseason. It's one game, so you don't want to read too much and too deep into it. But I'm okay with what we saw. I'm okay with what we saw there. And if that's how the defense is going to look with the guys that we have on this team, I love to see Micah Hyde out there being Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer getting the blitz every now and again, and Teron Johnson getting involved in the backfield. I love those things. So you figure out those things, and then you have two versatile safeties at the back of your defense to get things done. Sign me up all day for that defense. Now flip it to go along with that offense with a good offensive line that can protect Josh in a good running game that will move the ball so Josh doesn't have to put himself in harm's way. Sign me up, dog. Sign me up. Sign me up every time. So, no, I'm with it. I'm with it. Couple of announcements before we get going. I want to let everybody know about a party that you absolutely have to be at. Bills Mafia is back. Are you ready for it? The third annual Buffalo Rumblings IPA beer release party is going down September 16th, 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at the Resurgence Brewing Company located downtown at 55 Chicago Street. I'm going to tell you what, you do not want to miss this event. Come out and hang with Joe, Sarah, and the rest of the Buffalo Rumblings crew for the Megapod. You're going to want to bring your questions and be a part of the live stream. Get involved. It's going to be live. And this year, we're also going to have our friends from Fans of Buffalo joining the party and sponsoring the fun. They're going to be in the house to provide you with all the information you need to make your away game day experience the easiest and the most smooth that you've ever had in your life. I can promise you, they do their job very well. So make sure you make it out Saturday, September 16th, 6 p.m., Resurgence Brewing Company, 55 Chicago Street. Go Bills. And listen, not only do you want to be there for the live pod that's going to have Joe, Sterling, Sarah, Jeremiah Poyer. We're going to have the Mafia cast, and you never know what surprises I have for you for the show as well. But outside of that, outside of the pod, the beers are awesome. There's going to be, I know everybody loves Kate, right? Kate is going to come and set up a table. She's going to have all the dope gear. Like last year, I should have pulled it out to show you guys. Pause. I have a hoodie that she made me. It's like, she does the dope. She just does the dopest stuff. So she has hats that she's doing. She has hoodies and t-shirts and leggings and all types of stuff for everybody. She has something for everybody. So come, bring your cash apps and Venmos and do all that stuff. Get some money and get some dope gear that it and essentially be one of one, because she does everything by hand. Every single thing that you get from Kate has the love and attention of her hands on it. It's a one of one every single time. And then, like I mentioned, Fans of Buffalo are sponsoring this event. It's gonna be dope. If you haven't already, you should probably reach out to them now if you're looking for Jets stuff, or if you're looking for the Washington game. They have some really good packages to where you don't have to worry about finding the tailgate. You don't have to worry about drinking when you're pre-gaming. They have all that stuff done for you. You just show up, eat, party with your friends, go to the game, and then go home. So check out Fans of Buffalo. Go check out Kate. Let's make this thing happen. And without further ado, let's pay some bills, but then let's talk to our guys. Let's go. Hey, football fans, the season is here. So you know that means family, football, and food. But for the NFL's best fan base, it can't be just any food. Bills Mafia only eats the best during the season. And the best is Picasso's Pizza. With 4 great locations in Western New York, it's so easy to treat yourself to the most flavorful pizza on game day. Picasso's. We are Buffalo Pizza, shipping local and nationwide. Order online at picassospizza.net. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have two special guests this week. Actually, one of my favorite tandems in Bills Mafia after me and Joe. I have Ryan Talbot and Matt Parrino from the Shout. Really, just shout everything. They do it all. What's going on, gentlemen?
Hey, not too much. Thanks for having us on.
Man,
What's
it's
up,
always a
man? I
pleasure.
feel like it's been too long. It's good to catch up with you and chat a little bit.
It has. I feel like I know we did. I think it was around the playoffs that you and I were able to do a show, and Ryan wasn't available. So, but no, you guys always show up for me, and I appreciate it. Last year, Matt, I know everybody who listens to the Code of Conduct, or even who kind of pays attention to me at all, remembers everything that happened last year. And then Matt showed up and did the karaoke. He had the best performance of the night at karaoke when we did the fundraiser for my Aunt Pearl. So
Best
that was dope.
performance.
No, it was a great time, and I appreciate you doing that. So, but let's get right into it, man. I feel like this is the fun time of year. This is where everybody's excited again. All the fans are back. Training camp just ended for the public, so we got our fix. We got our little taste of being close to the players again. What's it like for both of you at this time of year? Like, rolling, just getting things ramped up, because you cover them all year long, though. It doesn't stop for you. So what is this year? This time of year like for you?
Well, training camp's a grind. I mean, I love it. And Ryan and I talk a lot about this on our show. Like when we're ramping up and getting ready to go out to St. John Fisher, it's this excitement level. And then being there and interacting with Bills fans, it's like, it's overwhelming at times. Like, we don't really look at ourselves maybe the way that a lot of Bills fans do. Like we're just kind of a couple of regular guys that do our job, that love covering this team for just a super passionate fan base. But like seeing people stopping us, like in the stores, on the sideline, like it's fun. But I will say, it gets to a point at the end of camp where I'm like, man, we have just grinded this thing into the ground, and I just need a little bit of a break. So I've been kind of like stepping back a little bit. And Ryan can talk about this. I mean, we've launched this new part of our coverage. It's called Shout Buffalo Bills Insider Text Line. And it gives fans the opportunity to connect with us one-on-one, or one-on-two, I should say. And that's taken up a lot of our time over the last 2 weeks. It's kind of altering our coverage a little bit. But the early returns, Ryan, have been really positive.
Yeah, it's been awesome. So, what it is we can send they call it a broadcast. So kind of like a group text to everyone that subscribes to the Shout Insider, what we saw at practice, what we saw at training camp. If we got a good quote from a player, we get that out to them first, and then they can respond to it. But it just comes back to Matt and myself. And then we kind of go through and we respond to them. If they have any questions for us one-on-one, they can send a direct message. They can't send a message to the entire group of all the subscribers, but they have access to Matt and myself whenever they want. And it's been really cool.
Wow.
It's awesome. So I'm glad we've kind of gotten into this endeavor. It's been a cool experiment, but like Matt said, it's time consuming. It changes how we kind of have to pivot our coverage a little bit. But, Matt's living the dorm life at training camp. I'm coming down on the weekends because I'm still doing some teaching throughout the summer as well. But he's right. It's kind of surreal. Like, we're going along the sidelines at the end of the practice, and some guys that came out to a live show asked us to sign their pass, their friends and family pass, that they were underneath the tent. I'm like, man, I don't know. I think you're going to lose value on that if you want my autograph on it. But little things like that, stopping for pictures, post podcasts. And we had an awesome turnout at a live pod in Rochester. Wing Nuts came out. We went through over 1,600 wings. So, I mean, unbelievable the support that we're getting from this fan base.
No, it's awesome to see. And I love when you guys do Wing Nuts and, you have the event, and I love to see the pictures and the videos that's posted. And let me ask you this, and we talked about this a little before going live here, and I never really asked anyone, but as a beat reporter for both of you. Now I know Ryan, you do both. You teach and you do this, so it's a little bit different for you. So for both of you, we'll start with Matt, then we'll swing it to Ryan. But what is it like to be a beat reporter? For me as a content creator, I started this once COVID hit back in 2020. Like, President Trump shut the country down, and I was bored. I didn't get a chance to get out and meet anybody out here in Phoenix, and I couldn't do anything. So started a pod out of a hobby, out of boredom. And, it's actually, for me, it's grown into a lot. But I'm still not quite where you guys are. And for most people who cover the Bills or any team as a content creator, you would have to think that's like the goal, it's the dream. So Brian, like I said, we'll start with Matt actually. So Matt, for you, the process of, the beginning of it, the stages, and then now to where you are, like, what is this experience like for you? How is it different versus like me being a content creator? What's different for you on a day to day?
Well, just about my journey to this job. I mean, I went to school specifically for this. Like, I went to be a journalist, to be a sports reporter. Like, that's what I want to do with my life. And so I studied it in school. I spent probably 3 years covering UB, University of Buffalo athletics. Won a national award for a feature story that I wrote on a basketball player. And that kind of really was my springboard into the career. And then my first job out of school. And this is what I tell a lot of young people. Like, I'm a teacher as well at UB now, as an adjunct. And I tell a lot of kids coming up, I shouldn't say kids, young people, what it takes to make it in this business. You're not going to cover the bills out of school. And I feel like that's a deal breaker for a lot of people. Like, my first job for 2 years, I was grinding, covering 6 low-level high schools, like working Friday and Saturday nights till 2 a.m, writing stories about, teams that nobody really cared about. Like they did in that small market in Tonawanda, North Tonawanda. But in terms of, the bigger, broader sports world, they weren't what I thought I was getting into that thing to do. But it was a blessing in disguise. Like, I learned how to do multimedia, like to write, to do video, to do social media. I mean, that's something that I've been cultivating in terms of my toolbox for years. And then I went to the UFC, obviously, changed the dynamic things, and then I came back. But I think the thing for me is that the biggest difference between beat reporter and content creator is the fan line. Like, on the content creator side, you can still embrace the fanhood. And honestly, you're not interacting with the team in the same way. And so it's easy to keep that. On this side of things, when you're interacting with them and having to ask hard questions and having to cover the team like 13 seconds and the Cincinnati loss, trust me, those fan goggles come off real quick in that locker room after the game when you got to go and talk to some of these players. So that's a little bit of the difference for me. But what I like about what I do, I think, and Ryan can speak to this too, I think I bridge the gap a little bit because I know the experience of the fan. I was that for 30 years. I grew up in Buffalo around this team. My family, my son is growing up with a Josh Allen jersey in his closet hanging. And so I have my finger on the pulse of that world. I just have to kind of remove myself a little bit from it doing the job. And that's okay. It's a sacrifice that you make to be able to do what I do.
Yeah, no, that was perfectly said in terms of, how you kind of have to take the fan hat off at some point. And I always tell people I had a very unorthodox path to getting to where I am now. And I'm a full-time teacher. I've been doing it for 17 years now, still enjoy it quite a bit. And many, many years ago, I saw something on Twitter, now X, about looking for someone to cover the Bills, send an article your way. And it was for a site called queencitysports.net with Mike Straw. And I sent something in, and he's like, yep, I like it. Let's go with it. And I had a background in writing from education, and I teach writing for a living. Mind you, it's a lot different with 10, 11, 12-year-old kids, teaching them the basics of it, but it's something, right? So it started out as a hobby. Queen City Sports. I was at Pro Football Focus Fantasy Division for a cup of tea. I did a site called Buffalo Bills Draft, which was really cool. A lot of really good writers came out of that. Dan Hope was running it at the time. He's on the beat with Ohio State now. He was a student at Clemson at the time. So there's some people there. I worked with Joe Marino at queencitysports.net. Some of the guys at Cover One were there as well. So, I kept bouncing around. I was the editor-in-chief of BillsMafia.com for a while. And then all of a sudden, Scout.com approached me and they said, we've kind of followed your work. We'd like you to kind of become our Bills beat reporter. They had just bought the site back from FoxSports.com. And that was different because then all of a sudden it went from a hobby to something I took very seriously, mind you, into an actual paying job. And like Matt said, it's writing the stories. It was creating these videos, having to learn a lot on the fly with that as well. Going into these websites and getting trained for how you write on those websites, because there's a lot of different functions and the ways that things work there. So that was interesting. And then I've been with, this company, Syracuse Post Standard, Syracuse.com, NYF.com since August of 2016. Thanks to Mike Rodak, he used to cover the Bills for ESPN.
Bills Mafia legend, one of the favorites.
Yes,
of Bills Mafia.
fan favorite of the Bills Mafia. But they had Matthew Fairburn there at the time, and Matt did a great job of building that up. It was kind of like during this trial period of what can we do with the Bills coverage, and they wanted to add a second person, and Mike Rodak suggested me, and I always thank him for that. And then when Fairburn left to cover the Patriots at the time, now back with the Sabres, I got to start working with Matt Parrino here, and we've built quite the friendship, and it's cool because we go on the road together on certain games. He's going to all of the games on the road. I get to pick and choose, and when it works around my schedule, I'm there in the press box with them.
And early on, Ryan, the budget was tight, so we were rooming together on the road. We got real close.
We were. I'm going to tell this. Should I tell the story about the one time that the woman came for towels or something like that?
Sure. Absolutely, you
That's
should.
what we're here
What do you mean? Should you?
We're sharing this room, and it was a big room, whatever the case may be, and I guess like she came to the door for towels or something like that. And I'm just like in the background, just like laying on my bed, and Matt's like, yeah, she probably definitely got like the wrong idea with that one. I was just lounging, enjoying myself. But budget's tight. You share a room sometimes, and that's okay. But look at where we are now.
She's like, these guys are putting lotion on each other's backs. And... no,
listen,
but I mean, but
listen, I could do a lot worse for a life partner than Ryan Talbot. So
I was just gonna say,
that's fine.
If you're gonna have a life partner with somebody, at least have it be with somebody you can work with all the time. That's a perfect
right. Yes.
So, but okay, we'll get it. I just wanted to kind of give everybody a little bit of insight to kind of what it's like to be you guys outside of what we see, because on Twitter, obviously you see, oh, these guys have big followings, or hey, these guys have been around the team, but just to kind of just get some insight on who you are and kind of what you do, I think it's fun. But let's talk a little football. That's why everybody probably tuned in for me to talk to you guys, to talk about football. We had the game this past Saturday, and there was a lot that I was encouraged about, but a couple things that I wasn't. Ryan, let's start with you. Just overall, what are your feelings about the team at this point after the first preseason game?
Yeah, it's tough to take a lot out of it because the starters had very limited reps on the offensive side of the ball. But the one thing I saw was James Cook and how well he was running the ball. And Matt and I made a point to emphasize how much the Bills were really working on the run game this summer at training camp. And it seems like that became a priority of, we're still going to be a very pass-heavy team, but the run game hasn't been up to par the past few years. And whether it was Cook or Latavius Murray, Damian Harris, they were really practicing it a lot this year. And I thought the run game looked very good for the Bills for the most part. Cook running very well between the tackles, getting some nice blocks on the inside from Osiris Torrance and Connor McGovern, new faces there. And then being, sprung to the outside, great blocks by a new addition in Trent Sherfield. And Dawson Knox has really come along nicely as a blocker in his career. But that was my big takeaway on offense. Defensively, you guys kind of got to see what we saw at training camp a lot, an aggressive defense, bringing pressure, even though it's a preseason game, not going up vanilla all the time. And I think that's going to be maybe the biggest change on the defensive side of the ball, is that you're going to see more aggressiveness from Sean McDermott in this team.
I mean, for me, defensively, I don't know if it was as good as you probably were hoping with how many starters were playing at the start. I think a couple positive notes to take from the game. Micah Hyde looks like Micah Hyde. And, that is massive for this defense. For whoever is out at that second cornerback job, I think Micah Hyde means as much to them as anybody, because, in that zone scheme, you really rely on his versatility, his ability to kind of, flank you and, take up a lot of room back there. And so I think if he's back and he's able to play even close to the level that he had in previous seasons, that is huge for a young Kyer Elam or Christian Benford or a veteran like Dane Jackson. I mean, I think Dane Jackson, I don't know if I'd say regress, but definitely didn't have as good of a season as he did in 21. Right. I felt like, but part of that I think might have been because he was playing with, DeMar Hamlin, who was learning on the job, getting thrust into that role. And I thought he had some good moments last season. The other piece of it too is positive wise. Tim Settle and Boogie Basham, arrow up for both of those guys. And I think you know what you're going to get from the Ed Olivers of the world, the Greg Rousseaus, the Leonard Floyds. Like, I think that's easy money to predict that. If Settle and Boogie Basham are going to be plus players on that defensive line, it's an absolute game change. And I think that they can maybe, steady the waters a little bit until Von Miller gets back. Because I don't think we're en route to Von Miller being ready for week 1. I think he's going to probably transition to reserve pup at some point before 53-man roster cut down, and then he'll miss at least the first 4 games. And why not? Don't rush him back. Let him get all the way back. On the downside, where my biggest concern is, middle linebacker. I like Tyrell Dodson. I think that he's a guy that could definitely be in the mix for this thing. But for his first big opportunity, I thought he left a little bit to be desired, from a coverage perspective, like attacking gaps, just tackling in general. I think he was one of the lowest graded tacklers on the Bills via PFF defensively. And that's just not what you want to see for a guy who has this huge opportunity with Terrell Bernard kind of nursing that hamstring issue and nobody else really in the mix. I mean, I feel like there's a lot of pressure on Tyrell Dodson right now.
You know what? I don't know if I should bite on that conversation or not. Like the middle linebacker, I'll bring it up because you know how I felt about Tremaine Edmonds. But before I bring that part up, you both kind of mentioned the defensive line play and just defense in general. I think I'm excited to see how aggressive Sean McDermott is over what we've had over the last several years. But my question to you is, because it was actually one of the prepared questions that I sent you both. Talking about that defensive line, you said arrow up for Boogie Basham, but the depth along, and obviously defensive end and tackles we're talking about here, but the depth along the defensive line, this is going to be something where a guy or two that we're used to seeing as a Buffalo Bill will not be wearing a Bills jersey this season, because it's just impossible with the guys that we brought in, plus the depth that we already had. Who would you say at this moment is probably somebody that we're used to seeing, but right now they're probably the guy looking out on the outside looking in, I should say.
I think Shaq Lawson is somebody that they know what that he brings, and I think there's a path to getting him on the practice squad. I mean, look at the last 2 off seasons. Like, there has not been a clamoring for him, and I think what works against Shaq is like the stops that he had in between his 2 stops in Buffalo, they just didn't go well. So I feel like that's kind of the book on him now, and I don't know if there's going to be a race to sign him. I think he fits in what Sean McDermott defense is, but I don't know if he ends up getting cut and you try to bring him back to the practice squad, it's going to be a problem where you won't be able to do that. So he's, to me, at the top of that list if they want to continue down this Epinesa Basham developmental path. I mean, I think Epinesa is a trade candidate right now. That wouldn't surprise me if that was a move that was made. I'd be very surprised if they cut him, only because you had that last year of the rookie deal and you can kind of lean into that. The Bills are also, Ryan, not scared to keep 10, 11 defensive linemen. They've done it in the past. And if Von is off and then you go 5 DTs, 5 edge rushers, you're in a place there where you could pretty much keep almost everybody if you want to try that game with Shaq Lawson. And I think you're sitting pretty there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, defensive tackle, they're 5 deep. So some guys that contributed last year, Ilianku, for instance, I don't see a path for him making it. But I think defensive end is really where it gets complicated because of, whether or not Von Miller's ready to go. You feel really good about Leonard Floyd if you're Buffalo and Greg Rousseau is your starters. But then it gets, the waters get a little bit muddy. It gets hard to decide who do you keep in that situation because Shaq Lawson, really good against the run. Maybe one of their best defensive ends once Von Miller went down last year and has that reputation of being a guy that you can count on. He's going to be in the right spot. He's not going to over pursue. He's going to, stay where he needs to be to make sure that you don't let these mobile quarterbacks break the pocket, etc. Epinesa is coming off of a 6.5 sack season. So like Matt said, I think that's a great trade candidate. I thought he had a nice training camp, but then in that preseason game, I thought he disappeared. I didn't think it was a great performance by him against the Colts where Boogie Basham did flash and he had a nice performance with a sack and a run stop. So it could be one of the young draft picks, though, either Basham or Epinesa, if I'm not going to go with Shaq Lawson in terms of who I could see being the odd man out because both are on rookie deals. That's going to be something that I think teams around the league would covet being able to have Boogie Basham, not just for this year, but for next year, for instance, as well on a rookie contract. Epinesa this year on a rookie deal and say, okay, we saw what he could do last year in a rotational role, a much smaller sample size. If we had to count on him in our system, whoever that team may be, maybe they're going to look and say maybe 6.5 sacks turns into 8 or 9 in our system based on our playing time. So the Bills have a lot of talent at D tackle and DN. It's going to be really tough for them to keep all of those players, not just on their 53, but even to keep them all on the practice squad.
Wow. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing what the team does. Every year, Brandon Beane, he kind of I don't want his job. Every single year, I look at the decisions he has to make, and it's just like, good Lord. Like years ago, it's almost like this is a good problem to have, but you almost prefer, back when, we had, I don't know, EJ Manuel as our quarterback. It's like, okay, we know who's going to be on the D-line. We know it just wasn't as difficult every year to figure things out. But it's a good problem to have. So real quick, before we switch over to the offense, I do kind of want to bite on that dangling fruit that Matt threw out there with the middle linebacker position. Everybody knows that my heart was broken, and I broke up from the Buffalo Bills for like a week when they did not re-sign Tremaine Edmonds, and he ended up signing a league, a league deal with, he is, I think he's the highest paid at this point, right? Or second highest paid middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears. Okay. So what is with this middle linebacker position? Matt said earlier that this is probably the one area that, he has some questions, and it wasn't the best of showings for this weekend. Where are we at? Ryan, let's start with you. What are we doing with no Tremaine?
Well, right now, it might be the end of the competition by default, depending on how long it takes Terrell Bernard to come back from this hamstring injury that he suffered right at the tail end of training camp. Obviously, availability is so important to Sean McDermott, and Bernard missed the first preseason game, and you want to be cautious with hamstring injuries. You want to make sure that when he is back on the field that he's at 100%, but if he's missing these preseason games, this is essentially their audition, their dress rehearsal for who they're going to roll with. And it was a two-man race by the end of training camp between Dotson and Bernard. At one point, they had Balen Spector in there. We never really got an answer on why he got that one game, or that one practice, I should say, with the first team, and then removed from the competition. I thought he actually performed very well at that practice. But again, it goes back to what's going on in the meeting rooms. Maybe there was something just there, but I think right now the competition is heavily in Dodson's favor. But like Matt said, wasn't the greatest performance. It makes you wonder, is this going to be something where the Bills are going to be looking at who gets cut across the league here at the end of the month to bring someone in as a safety option? You're not going to start that player week one, obviously, but are you going to bring in a veteran that maybe you could get up to speed in your system quickly? And hey, if these young guys in Bernard, if he's not ready, if Dodson shows he's not ready to that job, maybe they turn it over to a veteran in that case.
For me, so it's nuanced, because on one hand, you've had Tremaine Edmonds all these years, and look at how the seasons have ended. And as good as he's been in the regular season, and I've pushed back against some of the Tremaine hate, in line with what you're talking about, Spence. But I do think that there's some credence to those who say, in the big spots against some of these really fast over the middle players, Edmonds' size really works against him in that play. So are you going to pay that premium for a player that, when you get up against these really elite offenses and quarterbacks, his skill set, I feel like they almost, I don't want to say they pick on him, but they definitely find a way to neutralize his impact on games in the playoffs. And so I don't think it's as big of a deal. Now, what I will say is a problem on the Bills side of things for me is this is another example where I feel like there's a little bit of a disconnect between the front office and the coaching staff with plans for players that they draft. Dorian Williams is a perfect example. You draft him, you basically say that he's going to be outside when you draft him. Then we get to mini camp, and Sean McDermott says, oh, he's been working at middle linebacker. Then we get to training camp, and Sean McDermott says, no, he's working only at outside linebacker. And now you're in a spot where there's no good options, and you've spent no time developing the rookie fast coverage plus dude in Dorian Williams at the spot that you might need him. He's not playing for Matt Milano. Now, Matt Milano, he's not always the healthiest of players. So to have a backup for him, and if that's where Dorian Williams works best, I get that. But to me is another misstep, like mismanagement to a degree, or, hoping that you have something in a player. Terrell Bernard, even when he was out there before the hamstring injury, I didn't think he looked great. And so now you're in a situation where you're waiting for him to get back. You're going to have to roll with either Dotson or maybe in a pinch, AJ Klein. Don't forget about him. He's kind of sitting in the background, somebody that McDermott is comfortable with.
And AJ Klein has won the defensive player of the week. Obviously I get it. It was a one game type, but still he filled in at times. I don't know how much I would feel comfortable with him really filling in that role that Tremaine, the hole that he's leaving there. But one last question on this, and then we can kind of quickly jump over to the offense and then get on out of here. As far as this linebacker position, though, I guess for me, I just the way the team kind of handled their business during the offseason, I almost assumed that there would be a change in philosophy, because obviously, technically, you have a new defensive coordinator now with it being Sean McDermott, and losing a player like Tremaine Edmonds, if you don't bring in somebody to replace him, to me, it feels almost too difficult to replace him. So I was thinking, obviously, you bring in a Taylor Rapp, or you bring in these guys in the secondary for more depth. Obviously, Hyde went out last year. We saw what happened when you don't have that depth. So I understand it. But I was thinking more so we might see, a little bit more of a hybrid system where you have like the 6 defensive backs. I know that's maybe not too common, but I feel like in a passing league where we're going up against the Mahomes and Burrow and Aaron Rodgers twice in a year now, I just kind of looked at that. Do you see that still kind of being a possibility, or you haven't seen much of that at all throughout camp and practices? We can start with Ryan on that.
I think it can get mixed in. I don't think it's going to be something that is going to be their main calling card on defense. And at the tail end of training camp, we had Bobby Babich, at a media session. We actually asked about Taylor Rapp, and has he spent any time in the linebacker room a little bit to kind of learn about some of the nuances there, if you want to move him up and play him there a little bit, kind of as a hybrid type player. And he's like, well, no, he's a safety. He's learning a new system altogether. He hasn't had any time with us. He's got enough on his plate already. So, I'm sure that doesn't mean that they can't run a hybrid look and get the 3 safeties on the field or get multiple defensive backs. But I just don't think it's going to be their main calling card, so to speak.
Yeah, and I also don't think, as undersized as Bernard is, and actually if you put him next to Taylor Rapp, I think you'd probably be like, it's not as big of a difference as you'd say. Like, I just think that he does too many things, and most of his reps have come, to Ryan's point, at different positions. To hand him over the green dot potentially on the helmet, and ask him to play out of position and learn a really difficult position, I just think that's a little bit too much. Now, I do think that they'll find ways to work him in. And, we've seen over the course of the summer, like 6 DB looks that I think are really interesting. You can get really creative with that, like Taron Johnson on the field, Taylor Rapp on the field, and then move Matt Milano maybe even to the middle. Now, I don't know if I've seen that at all, but that's that's by design. Maybe that's something that they could keep in their back pocket. And you never know. Like Sean McDermott, I think, is going to roll the dice on a couple of different things to try to figure out these elite quarterbacks that they've struggled against at times. They're going to play them all in the regular season. They're going to get a chance to try some things out. I mean, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, Aaron Rodgers and Tua in their own division. I mean, it's never ending. And they're going to me, that's kind of also what I think helps them more than in years past, in that they are going to be battle tested by the time the playoffs come. They're not going to have this easy road to the playoffs, teeing off on the Davis Mills of the world. And, what was that one dude for the Broncos the one year? Brandon something or other. I can't remember his last name now. Whatever. I can't even remember his name. The quarterback was so bad. There's not a lot of those on the schedule this year.
Yeah, no. This is a gauntlet for sure. Like, if the Bills win the Super Bowl this year, I mean, I'm going to talk so ridiculously. Like, it's just going to be so bad for anybody who's not a Bills fan, because to go through the season that we would have to go through, and then plus you just think about the season that we got, but then the playoffs, the way the playoffs will look for us to have to win a Super Bowl, I'm going to talk so much. Like, it's going to be ridiculous. I can tell you now. So real quick, let's hit offense, and then let's get you guys out of here. I know it's a ton of work to be done. It's never a dull moment. You already mentioned James Cook earlier, so I won't really go there. I think he's going to be explosive. I love the way he looked so far in his limited role. But on offense, it's not as serious, I guess, because we do anticipate Josh being healthy. We want him healthy. But is there a problem really with the quarterback 2 position? Because I know Matt Barkley looked amazing Saturday. I'm still just not the guy that's like, I want Matt Barkley being my backup quarterback. I like him on the team. I feel like he's somewhat of an extended coaching piece for the team and everything. And I think Josh is very comfortable with him, so I think it helps. But in a pinch, I don't want Matt Barkley coming out there to go up against the Jets defense. I think the Jets have one of those teams. So is there a issue with Kyle Allen? Is there something that we might be looking at players, once cut down day happens, or what are you seeing when it comes to this backup quarterback position, Ryan?
Is there a concern? Yeah, but I think there was a concern last year too if Allen missed significant time. I wasn't overly impressed with Case Keenum and his stint with Buffalo in terms of if they needed him for a game or two, would he be able to win either of them? I think that the fans got, I don't want to say spoiled, but when they had Mitch Trubisky, they probably thought, okay, if he had to come in for a handful of games, he might be able to split them or keep them in those kind of matchups. But if you look across the NFL landscape, I mean, there's a reason why the backup play in most situations is bad. There's not 32 quality starters in this league, let alone 64 quarterbacks. And if your starter goes down in most cases across this league, you're going to be in a spot where your team's going to be in a lot of trouble for 1 week, 4 weeks, the rest of the season, depending on how long or serious that injury is. I watched a lot of preseason games this year this weekend because I'm a glutton for punishment. And when those backups came in, I said, I'm not sure most of them across the league these teams are in a better spot than the Bills if their starter went down.
Yeah. Well, Matt, before you jump in, let me ask this because so what Ryan is saying, I think we all can kind of agree that he's spot on point with. Joe Piscaglia of The Athletic kind of was talking about this backup quarterback situation, and he mentioned that he would throw out the idea of the Bills possibly trading for Sam Darnold as a backup. Or I've tossed out the idea a couple of weeks ago when the report came out that the Titans might not be too happy about Malik Willis. Like, hey, trade for him and have him develop behind Josh. Is something like that something that you would do? Or do you think, again, basically what Ryan said, like, look, around the league, you don't even have 32 very good quality starting quarterbacks. You can't expect to have like a very good backup as well. Where are you at with this?
I really like the idea of Malik Willis as somebody that can kind of fit into just watching Hard Knocks and some of the clips coming out of New York. Like Aaron Rodgers' arrival in New York has been a godsend for Zach Wilson. And I just think that if you put a young quarterback with similar skill set, and listen, it's horrible to compare anybody to Josh Allen because like the dude's one of one. He's a unicorn. Like you don't want to get into that business. Even like the Anthony Richardson comps, like I don't like those even. And so, and he's probably the closest that we've seen in the last 6 years of anybody to what Josh Allen is. And so I like that idea. The problem becomes like, what's the cost? Like, do they want like a 4th round, 3rd round pick for Malik Willis? That's too rich for my blood. If they want to like maybe a 5th, because the Bills have so much capital next year, sure. Why not? But I also don't like where they're at in the process. Like they've waited this long. It makes me think that they're like fine with it because what are you going to, how long is it going to take Malik Willis to download this offense to a place where you feel comfortable running him out there in a game? I still think it could end up being Matt Barkley for like 4 months because they just aren't comfortable enough with where Willis would be in understanding the scheme.
Okay, that's fair. And I guess for me, I was just thinking of, again, because I don't think Malik Willis is coming in, if something happened to Josh, it's not like I think he'll come in and then be the franchise altering play. He's not a Tom Brady 2.0 where he's going to take over from Josh. So, it was just, I don't know, I guess for me watching the game and then even just the reports that I'm hearing from camp that, Kyle Allen just didn't look the part of a backup that we would expect. And then even some fans are like, well, let's have Matt Barkley be the backup quarterback. And for me, it's just like, man, I just can't see. But again, if Josh goes down, we're in trouble anyway. We don't want Josh to go down. So,
and Kyle, one last note on Kyle, like he's going to be a completely different player in 2 months, even without the game reps because of his understanding of the offense. So I think for him watching the game the other day, he just needs to be able to process faster. And the only way you're going to really get to do that is with like reps. So over the next 2 games, he's going to get, even if they're all really bad reps, he'll probably get to a point where he feels, okay, if I do have to go into a game situation, I have this like base worth of reps that I can operate off of and play quicker and react quicker, knowing that I had all these things. So I don't think we'll really, that's the tough thing with this thing too. We won't really know what version of this player exists until he's actually has to go into a game in the regular season, which I don't know. It's late in the game to be adding new pieces unless they're just athletically give you more. But then again, Matt Barkley came in a couple years ago and lit the world on fire in New Jersey in that one game. So I don't know.
He did. Well, to that though, and that's my only debate, because some fans were like, "Well, Matt Barkley did that, so I'm fine with Matt Barkley." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that was against a 4-12 Jets team, right, that defense ranked 25th, and I'm giving Matt Barkley all the credit in the world, but like, you're kidding yourself if you think Matt Barkley's going to come in against this Jets team and put 30 up, yet alone 40." So, but yeah, okay. And then last one, and then we'll get out of here. Dorsey last season, obviously, there were both sides. It was a very polarizing topic when it came to our offensive coordinator. Last year, I feel that he kind of underutilized. I know towards the end of the season, Dawson Knox kind of came alive. The playoffs, he came alive. I feel like he underutilized the tight end position. There were some rumblings, no pun intended, that he was kind of, last year we wanted to run more 12 personnel based offense, which is why they tried OJ Howard and tried some things. When he didn't work out, that kind of, from what I'm hearing, threw off the plans for the season. This past weekend, we didn't even get a yard for Kincaid. Do you think that's just like holding our hands so that way people don't know what we're coming into the season with, or what's happening with Dorsey in this offense? Or you think we're going to improve in this area and just in general, or what?
You want to go first, Matt?
Yeah, we talked about this on our show a little bit. I do think that this was probably, they're not going to flaunt this guy out if he's going to be a huge part of the offense. I mean, they're going to try to keep that as close to the vest as possible. And what did they put on tape? Like 12 personnel, running out of 12 personnel. Now teams have to prepare for that. The Jets are going to have to install that. And I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see much of Dalton Kincaid over the next 2 weeks. And if we don't see him run one single route as a receiver the rest of preseason, because it's that kind of game. And I think the Jets game is so important. Like, it's going to set up the entire first part of the season. And we could look back on this as being like a pivotal decider in the division. And so to have every kind of, ace in the hole that you can play in New Jersey that opening week, as Aaron Rodgers and company are probably trying to get on the same page, you hope, if you're the Bills, I wouldn't do much with Dalton Kincaid and rest on all the reps that you've had in training camp and in practice.
Yeah, that's just it. Oh, go ahead.
Well, no, because I was just going to follow up with you for that one then. So now with what Matt's saying, we'll keep that to the vest. Now, I haven't been there. I'm in Phoenix, so this is like the first year I haven't made it back for at least one day at training camp. Is Kincaid, is he that good though? Like, from your eyes, does he pass the eye test for a first round draft pick as a tight end for the Buffalo Bills?
Yeah, he does. And he was outstanding at training camp. He didn't look like a rookie. He didn't play like a rookie. He obviously had a good grasp of this playbook by the time they showed up at St. John Fisher University. But, one last note on that preseason game from Saturday. If there's one area where the Bills probably want to see Kincaid improve, it's as a run blocker. It's in the blocking. He didn't have to do that much at Utah. So I think having him out there for those 5 or 6 snaps and say, you're going to be out there and you're going to be blocking when you're out there for the most part, I think that did him well. We talked after the game and said, he got thrown a little bit on the James Cook touchdown run, but to Matt's credit, he held up the block long enough. He was able to do enough in that spot to spring James Cook open, help him spring open to the left side of the end zone. So I think those are valuable reps for Dalton Kincaid, where, in season, is he going to be blocking a lot? Probably not. You're going to want him out there lined up as a receiver, lined up in a lot of creative ways to let him use his skill set. But how is he going to get better at blocking without those live reps?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I everything that I've been saying and seeing from clips and all this stuff is like, okay, I think he's going to fit into this offense very well. And honestly, I think just based on certain conversations that I've had with people, I think Dawson Knox mentally is in a very good place. So I think we're going to have both of our guys be on point. I think Diggs is no longer, I don't think he was a problem anyway, but I think he's no longer like an issue in the locker room, quote unquote, like the national media is trying to still push. I think I'm excited for offense this year. I'm very excited for offense. But thank you, gentlemen, for everything. You gave us some good insight, and then you gave the content creators of the world some good insight as to what it's like to be you in the positions that you're in. So, gentlemen, thank you. Can't wait to see you guys. I'll be in New York and I'll be in Buffalo for week 1 and 2. So I can't wait to see you guys. Maybe grab a beer or something. And let's party it up. Anything you guys want to plug really quickly before we get out of here?
Just text us 716-528-6727. Become a Shout Insider. Try it for 2 weeks for free. $3.99 a month. After that, cup of coffee. Get you into the group text, if you will, direct line to Ryan and myself.
And I tell you what, it's worth it, guys. Even like I just had this conversation with these gentlemen for a little bit to have direct access to them, to be able to ask certain questions and get a response. I'm telling you, it's worth it. Pay the $3.99. You know what? I'll tell you what, the first person that's listening to this to reach out to me, I'll pay for yours for a year. Reach out to me. We're going to support you guys. No, I'm going to do it. One person. That's not a lot of money, but I'll do it. You know what I mean?
That's a lot of money, man. Dropping a 50 bones on this thing right off the jump. I love it.
It's worth it. You guys, like, honestly, the content that you guys give us all year long is so worth it. So anybody who's an extreme Bills fan who really wants to be in the know and learn these things, reach out to me. I'll connect with Ryan and Matt, and I'll make sure I do it properly to set up through the proper channels to make sure the payment goes through me and the messages go through you. But no, let's do that, man. $3.99 is not a lot for great content. Let's do it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
And you see their handles here on the page here. So Ryan's Habit Bills and Matt Parrino. Follow the guys on all socials. Ladies and gentlemen, y'all know we do it at Buffalo Rumblings. Y'all love each other, take care of each other, and live in peace. And as always, stay positive, test negative, go Bills. You guys can say go Bills. I know you're beat reporters. You could do it. You can say go Bills. Come on. No? Okay.
Code of conduct.